Hello everyone, my name is Paul and I'm a PhD student from the University of Siegen. Today I'm presenting the paper Trust versus Privacy, using connected car data in peer-to-peer car sharing. Taking a closer look at the sharing economy, we see a steady growth in recent years. Accordingly, for peer-to-peer platforms to succeed, trust plays a central role. In this vein, trust is also sometimes referred to as a lubricant of the sharing economy. We choose car sharing as cars are high valuable goods and the automotive industry is strongly affected by digitization. In peer-to-peer car sharing, people give strangers their cars, which might hold not only an economic but also an emotional value. This value can potentially result in concrete ideas about how to handle the car and is one of the main issues why people don't want to share their private cars with strangers. Connected car technology may bring new potentials for supporting trust by providing car owners with information that enables them to track, for example, car condition, rentees' driving behavior. But this step, however, would also introduce new challenges in terms of privacy. In this respect, a tension arises between car owners and rentees. In our work, we therefore wanted to take a look at both perspectives, car owners and rentees, and explore the tension between trust building and privacy protection in peer-to-peer car sharing. To do so, we focused on the following research questions. First, what information do car owners need to build trust in order to share their car? What information are rentees willing to disclose to get a car and maintain privacy at the same time? How do people classify information from the perspective of car owners and rentees? And is it possible to build trust without invading privacy in peer-to-peer car sharing? Before doing so, we want to give a brief definition of trust our work was based on. Meyer et al. Defined trust as the willingness of a party to be vulnerable to the actions of another party based on the expectation that the other party perform a particular action important to the truster, irrespective of the ability to monitor or control that other party, which describes the relationship of dependence between the parties in the sharing economy very well. On the other side, we have privacy, which is, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, the right that someone has to keep their personal life or personal information secret or known only to a small group of people. In the literature, a connected car is described as a vehicle that is connected to the internet, can communicate with other devices like cars, and road infrastructure, and can collect real-time data from multiple sources. Currently, car sharing providers don't use connected car data to build trust on the sharing platform, at least in my country. In the insurance industry, however, we can find first approaches towards connected car data-based reputation systems such as telematic tariffs. There, data is collected automatically while the car is in use in order to differentiate between trustworthy and safe drivers and non-safe drivers. This data can then be used to promote defensive driving by offering the good drivers cost reductions. Nevertheless, it remains unclear to what extent such approaches can be transferred to promote trust in the sharing economy. To answer these questions, we conducted 3 focus groups and 8 individual interviews. Altogether, 23 people participated in our study. During the focus groups, participants unexpectedly tended to adapt their position to the group accordingly. We therefore decided to combine the strength of both methods, focus groups and individual interviews, to compensate the weaknesses. Each focus group participant was asked to imagine data sources and connected car information and to write these on sticky notes. The focus groups were therefore used to obtain a broad spectrum of ideas and views on the use of connected car technology for car sharing and to obtain initial information on social norms for using data. Following the transcription process, a qualitative content analysis was performed. After each interview was an iterative process, where the results were incorporated into the following interviews. The transcripts from the focus groups were initially coded and analyzed to identify first categories that could be used to set up the interview guideline for the individual interviews. The coding categories were therefore inductively derived from the focus groups, forming the basis for the individual interviews. The participants in the individual interviews only took one perspective to avoid adopting other perspectives and thus distorting the results. Analyzing the data, we were able to identify and cluster specific types of information. First, our participants discussed information about drivers, such as driver identification, information about driving experience, ratings, creditworthiness, and so on. Secondly, participants argued very often with the state of car by dropping comments about the oil level, brake disc, tank level, loading weight, or engine noises. Apart from the state of the car, there were discussions about the driving behavior of the rentee. Examples were driving style, is the rentee a good or a bad driver, acceleration, lane changes, parking behavior, and so on. We also identified an information type for special events which were described as a specific point of time during the rental, like accidents, border crossing, speeding, or parking damages. Another often discussed information were location-based information such as GPS sensor logs, GPS routes to see if the rentees stick to the agreed area. We also had a category for other topics where the participants dropped information types like specific individual agreements between car owners and rentees, copies of relevant documents, claims of damages, and so on. We also found it very interesting how participants classified the mentioned information types from the car owner and rentee perspective. From the car owner perspective, some information were described as important. Other information are just interesting in special events, and some information types are even unimportant for the most car owners. On the other side, from the rentee's perspective, we also found information that participants easily would disclose. Also some information that they would disclose in specific situations, and some that they would never share. We called it rejection. So if we compare these two classification scales in a matrix, 9 different classifications can be made. Further, we found out that the information demands can be differentiated by time. Some information demands arise before the rental, some during the rental, and some afterwards. Let us go through the most frequently mentioned ones. For example, we have ratings or evaluations. It seems to be important for car owners before the rental, and rentees are willing to disclose this information because it seems like legitimate demand to build trust between rentee and car owner. One finding therefore is that user acceptance increases when data collection serves a legitimate interest that is perceived as proportionate and data economic. Another example are GPS information. These, on the other side, seems also be important during the rental for most of car owners. But most rentees are not willing to share this information because they perceive this as an intrusion into their privacy. Therefore, privacy concerns depend on the appropriateness of purposes. As an example for information demands after the rental, we have driving behavior of the rentee. Car owners are interested in this kind of information to decide whether they would share their car with a specific rentee again, depending on his or her driving behavior. On the other side, potential rentees say that they would share this information, but only if they get a discount for disclosing it. For example, in the case when they drive properly. In our last example, we see that certain areas of information are negotiable, such as information about accidents during the rental. Both sides agree that this information should be shared in the case of an accident. Interesting is that some participants from the rentee perspective only would share it if they are not guilty. These arguments were indicators for negotiability. When both parties need or share information only in certain situations under specific conditions, we have an area of negotiability which should be considered in the design of such IoT-based trust systems, for example by giving monetary incentives for disclosing more data. Several studies have shown how current reputation systems aim to trust prior to use. The traditional approach to building trust before use can thus be extended by information during and after use. Sensor data that has been recorded during and after use could be aggregated and published as a driving score on peer-to-peer car-sharing platforms, as suggested by some of the participants, and thus serve as a trust-building assistance in later decision-making. Knowledge of better possibility of controlling the goods during and after use creates trust in advance and increases the willingness to share a car. However, this positive effect on the sharing economy must be understood and quantified more precisely in further research. Regarding the situatedness of information, it became apparent that in addition to the temporal classification in before, during and after rental, there were also distinctions in the argumentations between real-time transmission of information and the manual retrieval of information before, during or after rental. Many participants wished to see how one is seen by the others through the respective information. Accordingly, the rentee should be able to get a view of the car owner. The possibility of taking on the other's perspective could help to improve the coordination in unforeseen events, for example, to find an error in the event of a breakdown together with the car owner. Certain areas of information are negotiable, and therefore this area of negotiability could be considered in the design of IoT-based trust systems. It is important to make a system as flexible as possible so that rentees can specify their own preferences as to which data they are willing to disclose and which not. Thank you for watching my presentation and stay healthy. I hope to see you all in Yokohama.